homelessness from one perspective. There are three different definitions of homelessness. There's the homelessness, the Canadian definition, there's the Indigenous definition, there's the youth definition. We have to look at all three of those areas to ensure that we tackle each of those areas specifically. For youth, all the supports that they require. So for example, youths who are transitioning out of the child care system have no supports, they end up homeless. We need to be able to address that. We also need to understand that for many people who are homeless, they're homeless because of specific issues, economic, structural, illness. How do we address those? So again, my idea is that we need, first of all, to look at everything on an individual basis, and we need to look at everything to ensure that we're addressing the specific needs of those people. Elderly, again, they have specific needs, which include medications, long-term care. We cannot, in my opinion, we cannot address homelessness from one large or one homogeneous thing. We need to make sure that we're addressing it for the specific, actuated needs that address the needs of the people themselves. Thank you.
So homelessness, of course, is in a crisis state in regards to housing. And there are many things we can do to alleviate homelessness in our ward. The federal government in particular has actually put aside $1.5 billion for co-op housing. And we need to tap into those resources. And also I know that even though there's these funds available, there are so many barriers to actually access those funds. If governments actually want to reduce homelessness or get rid of homelessness by 2030, we need to make sure that regulations are actually removed so we can actually build more housing. But one of the things we can actually do here in Toronto specifically is to actually build housing across the city, not only in Toronto Centre, and exclusionary zoning, for example. We need to build more duplexes, triplexes, not only in Toronto Centre, but across the board. There are many triplexes here in Toronto Centre already, as I've canvassed down there many here already. But we need to do that across the city. And I think that in itself will help alleviate any of the social ills we see around us here in Toronto Centre and across the city.
Just going to check the sound here. I was getting a little bit of a whine there. That's not a shot, please. The feedback. Was anybody else hearing that? Okay. So, could you repeat the question?
Sure. The Government of Canada has set an ambitious goal to end homelessness by 2030. What actions and policy changes will you champion to achieve this goal?
I'm not running for a federal office. I'm running to become your city councillor. I'm glad the federal government has made an amendment, but that doesn't affect what needs to be done at City Hall. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit right there that can be used to solve our housing problem locally. We'll take the federal money if it's available, but we can't possibly wait for that to happen. Dixon Hall has a number of very good ideas about what is needed to create supportive housing. People who are wrestling with mental health and addiction need housing. They don't need to be put in boxes or cages. There need to be supports in place to help those folks remain housed. Otherwise, we have this revolving door. The largest landlord in Toronto is Toronto. Toronto Community Housing Corporation owns an enormous amount of real estate right now, much of which is not housing. Part of our platform, which is on our website, is to use the existing programs like co-op housing to manage some of TCH houses so that they can in turn make more of their properties habitable. Does that make any sense to people? Co-ops work. I'm a co-op member. City Park Co-op has 750 units run by the members like me. We need more of that. And as to shelters, the rest of Toronto has to pick up its fair share, which it simply has not been doing. Yes, we need shelters here in the downtown core, but we also need Scarborough Community Council, the Etobicoke Community Council, your Community Council to pick up their fair share. There's more on the website, but that's something we can do right here in the city of Toronto. without waiting for the federal government to step in.
Thank you very much. And I know that there is a lot of criticism when it comes to Band-Aid solutions, but what I will say as somebody who was unhoused at one point, Band-Aid solutions serve a purpose. And what I would like to look at to eradicate or curb homelessness within Toronto and ultimately end it by 2030 is the utilization of the Band-Aid solutions. While we work with Toronto Community Housing to build better housing, to build housing where somebody can go to and feel a sense of dignity and pride in where they live. Because we know that when we offer people a sense of dignity and pride in their home and in their community, what it does to uplift themselves and the community. So what I would look at is encouraging more of those temporary solutions, a few more shelters, a few more of those hotel organizations that work with the city so that we can get everybody off the streets as quickly as possible. While that is happening, to work with the city to get them into something a bit more permanent, like Toronto Community Housing, that is providing a bit more dignity. While that is working, now we work with the developers to create more affordable housing. As they are in Toronto Community Housing, we offer them that opportunity to now move to affordable housing. Because one thing I think that a lot of people are looking at here is they say affordable housing. They talk about homelessness. But nobody's looking at how we bridge the gap between the two. Affordable housing actually means you have to be able to afford that housing. But how do you get there if you're unhoused? That's why I believe in the solutions moving forward. Sorry, I see my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have a lot of experience with regards to homelessness. I used to be a homeless person after losing my job at the Toronto Zoo. I lost my home, I lost my car, I lost my children, I lost my family. I ended up on the streets of Toronto, Ward 13. I stayed for 2 weeks at the Good Shepherd Ministries shelter. And I was very fortunate that Street Homes met me on the street and asked me, would you like to have housing? I said, yes, I would like to have housing. And they took me to a building owned by DCHC in Etobicoke. Over there, I noticed a lack of repairs and negligence by the 3 levels of government to maintain Toronto community housing. Since then, I became an activist for social housing, and I have never stopped advocating for housing issues at Toronto, at City Hall. I have been an activist since the year 2010. I've been speaking about the issues about how to defund the Toronto Police $1.2 billion and allocate that funding to build social housing in the city of Toronto. We don't have to have a $1.2 billion agency that does nothing to address the issues of social housing but to make it worse. So please, on October 24, vote for Miguel. Thank you.
So that was the answer to our first question. We're going to start our second question with Chris starting first. Second question is, gender diverse individuals, especially those from the BIPOC community, describe higher levels of discrimination from landlords. What policy changes will you implement to effectively address homelessness and housing need for the 2S LGBTQI+ people?
Well, thank you for the question. I'm a member of the 2S LGBTQ committee as well. And over the last 4 years, I've been the co-chair of the 2S LGBTQ committee of the TDSB. And as I mentioned prior, I worked at St. Michael Hospital for the last 22 years as a counselor in Merge, and some of my clients were actually from my community. So I know some of the struggles that they face, the discrimination not only in housing, but in healthcare and other. And we as a city can actually put things in place, regulations in place, to make sure that people are not discriminated against when it comes to housing. I know some of our partners here that put this together today, that they do amazing work to support 2S LGBTQ youth. For example, EGOT was not here today, but I know they've created many spaces for the 2S LGBTQ community. And numbers. So we, as a city, can actually support the communities or the organization in place to make sure that our community is held in an authentic, real way. Because I know policy is one thing, but implementation is another. And we need to make sure that they have the supports, wraparound services supports needed to make sure that they can be the full and whole self, no matter what space they're in.
Sorry, the question again is about gender diverse.
Gender diverse individuals, especially those from the BIPOC community,
Sure.
describe higher levels of discrimination from landlords. What policy changes will you implement to effectively address homelessness and housing need for the 2S LGBTQI+ people?
Right, well, when it comes to gender diversity, another thing to, the fact is that there are very few women running in this race, not just in this riding, but across the city of Toronto. And there is only one transgender woman, and that is me. Now, I don't pretend to represent everybody. I am a member of several equity-seeking groups, so check those boxes. I'm a woman, I'm a trans woman, I have a disability, I'm an elder, I'm a member of the queer community. Those things are part of who I am, and simply by speaking up and showing up, as many of us have done, is how we change lives. It is illegal to discriminate against people, and yet strangely it still happens. I have been an advocate for the past 35 years. Not just because I think it's important for the community, but out of personal necessity. I've been thrown out of housing because I came out as trans. That's a lens you simply cannot get clear. And there's a lot of talk about the need to have more women, and particularly more gender diverse women in politics. But there's only one of them on this stage right now. I wish there were more. I wish I was having a debate with more women, more gender diverse people, but I'm not. So I think I can answer that question. I don't need to be confrontational, but you've got to call it for what it is. Nothing about us without us. And this, if you elect me, I will be the first trans woman elected to city council. We're not underrepresented, we're not represented at all.
Thank you. So actually, discussing this with myself, my team, and with the community, I've come up with a 3P model, which is People Protection Policy. This is a policy that I've encouraged a number of other municipal governments to create, where we can protect BIPOC, trans, gender diverse people from such discriminations within their communities. We all know this reality too well, especially those that are renters. We all know that we can be discriminated against very easily. We've all heard about the evictions, the rent evictions, everything, anything to get us out of our dwelling. And so I encourage the city to create a 3P, People Protection Policy, People Protection Programs, so that when anybody who is gender diverse, who is BIPOC, who understands that they may have not been evicted for the right reasons, that they can contact the city of Toronto. And we have a human rights code of conduct that is set aside to protect those individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a firm believer that there should not be any form of discrimination at all for housing. Regardless of your orientation, there should be no any way form to evict anybody or reject anybody to apply for housing. I have a daughter who is a member of the LGBT community, and I will make sure that any law or any policy that is passed in City Hall helps my daughter in seeking housing in the city of Toronto free of discrimination for anybody. We should also invest that our tenants remain housed. That's one of the problems that in DCSG we're facing with. The lack of support when people are facing addiction problems and mental health. So we need to invest to ensure that our tenants, regarding their orientation, they should be maintaining their homes. Thank you very much.
Oh, so it's one of those questions. So let me start by saying that landlords will always find a way, and I know there is something I can do. Totally? Okay. So one of the things is landlords have always found ways to get tenants out. That's what we need to stop. There are mechanisms. There's the ombudsman, there's the tribunal, there's if you're HIV positive, there are organizations like HALCO. But the point is, landlords still will do this. They will use that their families are coming, they're selling the place, etc., etc. What we need to do then is we need to set up a system where we follow these landlords when they are reported. That way we get a database. We know which landlords are actually doing this, and then we can proceed against them. Because the law is you cannot discriminate against somebody for their housing, their sex, their sexual orientation, etc. So that is my mechanism. The other mechanism that I think is that we also need to build housing for these people. And by that I mean, somebody has mentioned Toronto Community Housing having large assets which they do not use. We need to ensure that that building is done through partnerships with organizations that we have here that deal with BIPOC youth, that deal with these things, that understand what sort of housing they need. So those are my two mechanisms. Set up a database for these, a word I'd like to use for those type of landlords, but I won't because we're a polite company. Set up a database, ensure that those people are prosecuted or charged at least. That way, that will serve as a deterrent. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for answering that question. For the third question, there is a gender bias against adequate and equitable funding for women's services in Toronto. How will you ensure the needs